Welcome to Soundscapes, the podcast for the Swedish Chamber Orchestra. My name is Gregor Zubicky and I have the great pleasure of being your host. And today we are going to meet the wonderful musician and violinist Antje Weithaas. And we'll be talking about, well, we'll see what we'll be talking about. That comes a little bit later. Welcome to Soundscapes. In a short while, I'll be talking to Antje Weithaas, great violinist, wonderful musician, and a great friend of the Swedish Chamber Orchestra. But before we get there, because I want to talk to her, she does many different things, but she's a wonderful teacher. And I wanted to talk to her a little bit about that, and we'll see where we go from there. But this made me think about where it all comes from. And in fact, my own road to where I am today. I thought it might be a good opportunity, in a sense, to introduce myself. And my background is I was born in Sweden, and then I grew up in many different countries. My parents were musicians, my mother was an opera singer, and as a child, we lived in Germany. And I spent a lot of my childhood in opera houses, sitting backstage, listening to the performances, and it was a very interesting life. Then when I was about 8, my life changed completely. My family moved to Australia. And there we had a sheep and cattle property, a farm. And from sitting in opera houses, instead I sat on horseback. A lot of the work, daily work, was done from horse. And it was another kind of life altogether, quite removed from music. But at one point I went to see the film Sound of Music, and it made an enormous impact on me. All these kids singing, and I sort of lived myself into this. I became, in my own mind, a member of the Trapp family, and I sang a lot better than those kids did, in my own mind, so to speak. And then, as chance would have it, my family later moved to South Africa, hence my dialect. And in South Africa, through circumstances, I became a member of a newly founded choir school called the Drakensberg Boys Choir. And it turned out I had a really, really fine voice, a boy soprano treble voice. And this choir toured all over the country. We gave concerts in small towns and in big cities. And I was the choir's, so to speak, premier soloist. And I had the occasion to make some recordings. And I was sort of, in a very small way, in this small world, I was a sort of a star. And I thought, that's what I am, you know, how one thinks. And my voice broke. And while I was waiting for this voice to come back, somebody suggested I play the oboe. And I was given an instrument. And this instrument made an enormous impact on me. I just thought it was so beautiful with all this mechanism and things. And not only that, but I found a very fine teacher, a man called Francois Conradi. And I think your teacher on an instrument is an enormously important person. This is a person, in a way, guides you in and inspires you. And thanks to him, I immediately was filled with this idea of wanting to be an oboist, which turned out to be a good thing because I never got a voice back that anybody wanted to listen to. And to this day, I don't do any more damage that way. I then moved home to Sweden. Now, I'm 19 years old, and nobody in Sweden knows that I am a star, and they only hear me play the oboe in a moderately good way. So I had a long way to go. And my first teacher in Stockholm, in fact, said to me at one point, because he could see that my ambition and what I was actually doing were really far removed from each other. So he said to me, well, Gregor, you seem to be an intelligent young lad. I'm sure there's something else you can do that you can be good at. And that was a big shock, because I sort of thought I was good. And there were a number of ways you can deal with that. And I decided anyway that, okay, if that's the case, I have to approach the instrument and what I do completely differently, because I did believe that I was good, you know. So I changed my whole approach, and then I was really fortunate in coming to a music academy where there was a Norwegian oboist called Erik Njord Larsen. And Erik was and is a great teacher, and this school was a great place to work, and it changed everything for me. And as it turned out, things went rather well. And I became an oboist. I got a job in the Bergen Symphony Philharmonic Orchestra. And I had a successful life as a soloist. I made recordings, I did chamber music. I started the Chamber Music Festival. And everything was in a sort of way just going fantastic. When suddenly I got a problem with my hand, this hand, a focal dystonia. If you don't know what it is, it's not a problem, it's a neurological problem. And it simply meant I couldn't do certain things on the instrument. It wasn't like I couldn't do difficult things, I couldn't do certain basic things. So I went from whatever I was to suddenly not being able to play. And this was a big problem, because what are you? If you're not a musician, I'm not an oboist, what am I now? Very, very fortunately, I had started this chamber music festival in Stavanger. And thanks to this festival, I'd required a certain administrative skill. And I was one of those musicians who always knew better than the administration in the orchestra. I would always be up there telling them what to do and how things could be better. I was, in fact, quite an irritating person, I should imagine. So there was a certain justice to the fact that I was suddenly offered a position with this newly started Swedish chamber orchestra as their artistic manager. And they took a big chance on me, and to a certain extent I took a chance on them. And here we are doing this program. One of the really formative things for me, looking back, was when I was a student at this first Academy of Music, because I just learned this quartet by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, quartet for oboe and string trio. And I wanted to play it. I wanted people to hear me play it. I thought I played it pretty well. But I wasn't, any outstanding student at the school. There were so many other people there. And I thought, if I just try and play this somewhere, nobody will come. So I decided to arrange a concert, a whole concert with the best students at the school. And they would also all play Mozart. And then I would sort of slide my little quartet in there. And the audience would come because of the other students. And then they would also hear me. And then I realized, well, one concert doesn't really do it. Let's make a whole series. So I set up a whole series of 6 concerts, which became a success. And I repeated that the next year. And in a sense, I only did that so that I could play a specific piece of music. And what I learned from it was that it's important to put yourself, what you're doing, in a context. This is what we did with the Swedish Chamber Orchestra. And this is what I recommend anybody who's wanting to make a career or get forward in whatever you're doing. Just find a context in which you can put what you're doing that makes it interesting. And in a sense, that's been the story of my life. So that's the story of my road into music. And really the important thing, I think, in my story and in the story of any musician are the teachers you have. The role between a teacher and student in music is very intensive, it's very individual. It's one-on-one to start off with. It's not you sit in a class and there are lots of you and a professor tells you what to think and what to do or what not to think. This is a situation where you practice a whole week, you prepare something, you go and play it for somebody who then deconstructs everything you're doing, or maybe says this is marvelous. I was once at the Academy of Music in Berlin. I was at this stage already a very successful student or player, and I studied for this very famous oboist in Berlin. And one lesson I was playing, and it wasn't going that marvelously, let's be honest. And he looks out of the window and he says, Herr Zubicky, gardening is also a profession. Now that's pretty tough. And there are a number of ways you can take that. I decided to come a little bit better prepared to the next lesson. And so things went well from there on. And so the teacher is somebody who, on this one-on-one situation, develops you and criticizes you and tries to bring out the best in you. And this is, of course, what a conductor also does with an orchestra. Works with a whole ensemble, deconstructing, reconstructing, trying to find the whole way forward for the group. And this week, we have Antje Weithaas with us, and these are some of the things I wanted to talk to her about. Hello, Antje.
Hello, Gregor.
Welcome to Soundscapes. After all these years that you've come here, now finally you're on video.
Tja.
How does it feel?
I love these things.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Listen, I've been talking in this program and even in other programs a little bit about what it is to be a musician and the road to becoming a musician, and then, of course, life in an orchestra, which is also, I think, quite interesting.
I can't tell you anything about that because I never spent any time in an orchestra.
So, I mean, we can talk about that choice too, but you've done just about everything else, because you're a soloist, chamber music. You had your own string quartet for a long time, and of course as a teacher. And I was just talking also about
and play conduct.
and play conduct.
Yeah.
Which and maybe even possibly real conduct in the future. Is that well, who knows? Who knows? Everybody else is conducting.
It's actually a very, very difficult question, because in the last 2 years I started thinking perhaps I could do it. But I think as long as I can hold my violin and as long as I can play and show everybody what I want, probably I don't start conducting. But I have no idea. I think I don't have the right personality for that. So if I do it, I only could do it with orchestras who really love me and give me all space I need.
Yeah.
So I can't fight against musicians.
Well, I would hope that isn't so often the case for a conductor.
But you know, a conductor can be very lonely.
Yes.
And if you go somewhere and you see in the first 10 minutes, the chemistry between the orchestra and me is not 100%. How can you survive a whole week then?
It's a long week, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. But getting back to because a big part of your life is teaching at the Hans Eisler Academy in Berlin. How many students do you have in a normal year?
I have now around 14.
That's quite a big class.
That's a big class, yeah.
And what do you look for when you're taking in students?
It's actually very, very easy.
Yeah.
If I listen to somebody, I need to be touched by his playing.
Yeah.
So he needs to tell me something, and I need to be really, touched is the right word.
Yeah.
It's not only about violin playing. It's really something he needs to want to tell something, and he needs also to open his heart and his soul to the music. And of course, if you do it to the music, you do it also to the audience and to other people. That's very important for me.
So storytelling, in a way, telling a story.
Just having the opportunities to give emotions with the instrument, to be a real musician, not only a violin player. And for how many years will a student normally be then at the academy? And that's different.
Yeah.
We have this bachelor-master system. It's the same in Germany as in Sweden. We have this, And bachelor is at the Hans Eisler 4 years, and master is 2 years.
So
and then Konzertexamen is but not so many have that. It's also 2 years.
Then they go out into life. And I've just been attending a competition in Denmark.
In Denmark, I know you were. Okay.
I've just been attending this competition.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because many of these students at the end of their studies who are now looking for a platform to do other things. What is your experience of competitions?
Do we have so much time?
Well, we can take a few minutes.
It is actually ambivalent. Is that also an English word?
Absolutely.
For me, of course, I was really lucky with competitions because it helped me to get to know from the music market. So I got invitations from orchestras and I got a lot of opportunities. And but in the last years, let's say in the last 20 years, it really changed. And I have the feeling we have this competition market there, and then we have the music market. And I call it very often this competition hoppers. There are so many who are going from one competition to another, and of course they are fantastic players, and in a way, they mostly in the final, they win a prize. But what now?
Exactly.
And but you can live from the competitions quite well for a few years because the prize money is going up and up and up. And we have now in China this crazy amount of $100,000 for the first prize. This is ridiculous, I find. So, as you probably know, I took over also the responsibility for one competition in Hanover. Actually, a competition I'm really thankful to because I was lucky to win the competition when it was for the first time in '91, and it helped really to open the doors and to meet people, to meet other musicians, to meet conductors, and so on. And now after 21 years of Christoph Enggen, who was responsible, for that competition, the foundation decided we have to change something. And they asked me, and I do it together with a very good friend and a fantastic musician and a violinist of the Kuss Quartet, Oliver Wille, the second violin of the Kuss Quartet, and we do it together. And we were thinking in the beginning, competition. We really want to do that? Why? Another competition of hundreds, millions? And then we decided, okay, we try something completely different. We tried to bring these two markets together. We reduced the prize money, but we asked many promoters to be a real part of the competition. So they have the chance to come to Hanover from the semifinal and to listen to everybody and to choose their own prize winners. And that worked actually quite well.
You've done it already?
Oh yeah, we done it in Corona times. Yes, okay. We managed to make it in last October, September, okay. October last year.
All right.
And it was actually very interesting, and also the program we changed. It's really challenging for the competitors. They have, of course, there is Bach. That was also interesting. It's another subject, how competition players play Bach still, okay. After 50, 60 years, since we know about the historical informed way of playing this kind of music. I have the feeling in the violin world it is still not really understood, or I don't know, or not accepted, or there are so many who have no idea about how to play that style. And we asked also for the whole sonata, so they had to play, of course, the first movement, fugue. I don't tell you how the fugues are not fugues. The fugues are just violin pieces in tune and with a good sound, but no phrasings, no. It's really no rhetoric, no life. It's really amazing. I couldn't believe it. Not everybody, but the majority played like that. And we asked also for the third and fourth movement, which is normally not asked in competition programs. And that was interesting because the level of these movements were definitely lower than, also violinistically, than the first and the second. But we had another interesting changes. For instance, in the semifinal, they had to play with the Kameradenband, with the chamber orchestra, Mozart concerto, and they had to lead the first movement by Bartók Divertimento.
Lead the orchestra themselves.
Lead the orchestra themselves. Yeah, and it was very interesting. We were listening really 8 different interpretations. It was very interesting. So the orchestra reacted fantastically. Yeah. And then the second part of the semifinal was a recital, completely free. The only piece they had to do was one movement of the Haydn string quartet with the other members of the Kuss Quartet, of course not with Oliver, because it's, yeah. And they got the parts 48 hours before they had to play it. And that was also interesting because we wanted to see how they work by themselves on the piece, not with a teacher at home. And Haydn quartets, you can't prepare all of them. There are so many, it's impossible. And we have chosen not the famous ones, of course. Yeah. And it was very interesting. And then the other recital was completely free on a quotation by a writer.
So they had to create a program around
yes,
it.
And they had to write why.
So in other words, you were trying to see the whole musician.
I think in this music market today, you have to be very flexible. I think that times are over where you can decide at the age of 14, I want to be a big soloist. It doesn't work anymore.
It's something I've been thinking a little bit about is also what happens to you, because one prize you can get in music, of course, is when you get a job in an orchestra. Yeah. It's an audition, and it's behind a screen too, and you've got to play this repertoire, and you've got to play all this orchestral stuff, and then you get a job. And up to that point, everybody's really been interested in you, how you play. But once you come into an orchestra, you become a member of an ensemble.
Yeah.
And in a sense, your identity is put into the orchestra. You haven't done it yourself, but what are your thoughts on that?
It's tricky, but it depends on the personality of the player. And this is probably also what in auditions will be felt
about
by the orchestra, yeah. And I'm absolutely sure about that. My opinion is, if somebody is a very good musician, with ears, with the ability of communicate, then you can also play in a group, in an orchestra. Because you need to listen, you need to give your best for a bigger issue. That's actually what we do in music, or?
Yes.
So we interpret one piece and we give our personal approach, but always for the piece and not for us. And this is what happens in the orchestra. You have to adapt what you can give. And I don't talk about people who are just going to the orchestra and are frustrated because they have to play now in a group.
Yeah.
That's tricky. To live your life like that, my God, that's not nice.
No. I mean, and of course a chamber orchestra is in a sense a compromise.
Yeah, a chamber orchestra is a compromise, and of course you have the feeling you can give more from yourself.
Yes.
Because that's why probably a lot of people don't do auditions for big orchestras anymore.
No. Is that a problem then, do you think orchestras have in finding players?
No, they don't have problems in finding players. It is more which type
or
which type of musician is applying for which orchestra. That's very interesting.
Yes. Also thinking about the style of orchestra you're approaching so that you actually think about them.
Exactly.
A lot of the time we wonder when we hear people audition, they play the concertos very well. But when it comes to orchestral excerpts, it's as though they haven't even thought about these pieces.
Yeah, but this is also worth to discuss it. Does it make sense to listen to orchestra excerpts you never play in an orchestra as you played in an audition? It's different for wind players and for string players.
Yes.
For instance, this famous Don Juan plays, yeah? So everybody plays very carefully every note. In an orchestra, it's and it has to be a color. No. If you play an audition like that, you don't get the job.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very interesting.
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, or also these excerpts like Bruckner 9. Doesn't it make sense? What do you want to see? If somebody can play legato, if somebody can play in tune, you don't know if he's able to listen to the leading voice, actually, because it is not. So I'm a little bit, I'm not sure about that system. I think it would be much more interesting for an orchestra, just put a string quartet there, a fixed string quartet, and put the applicant, the auditioner into that string quartet and see what happens.
We do that.
Yeah,
we actually do that.
Very good.
We have a chamber music part of the audition. But of course, we say beforehand what piece it will be, but that tells us a lot, actually. You're right.
Yeah, much more. Or even if you have, the first and second round, final, sit in the orchestra and play with the group.
Are you involved with teaching at all for younger children?
I try to avoid that. I had a few 13, 14 years old, but I'm so much away. Yeah. And actually, I can't take the responsibility for that age because they need definitely every week, regularly, their lesson. And this, I can't. No. I can't do. So I'm looking for students who are actually quite grown up and who are able to work by themselves.
I'll tell you a funny story that happened to me when I was a student because my teacher hadn't been there for a few weeks. And so I was quite upset because I hadn't been getting my lessons. So I expressed this somehow, and he said to me, well, but are you prepared? Can you play the piece? I mean, are you ready? And he says, yes, of course. Well, then you don't need a lesson.
Oh, no, okay.
and then I said, Yes, but then I said, but what if I wasn't prepared? Well, then you shouldn't have a lesson.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about these excuses
So
for
this
teachers.
is an approach that you could take with you.
No, definitely not. So I'm never away for a few weeks.
No.
I try not, especially in the semester, 2 weeks should be the maximum that I'm away.
But for you as a musician, teaching is something that then gives you a lot?
I learn a lot from teaching.
Yeah.
Because if you teach, and I started when I was very young. Actually, I did my exam, and the next semester I started teaching. I should give a big sorry to all my first students, but you have to learn it, of course. Yeah. And with every student, you learn something. And the good thing about it is that, of course, you have to tell about how to play. And for me, it's very important that it's with the natural approach of the body, that they are breathing, all these, the position of the instrument, that the violin is something like our voice chords and not something we, and it really has to belong to the whole personality. And if you work musically, it is very important to have reasons for what you're asking.
Yeah.
That means I can't say, oh, I feel it like that, just do it. Oh, I play it for you. I never play, almost never play in lessons, because they immediately start copying. And I want to bring out the own voice of every player.
So who was important to you when you were in that role? When you were a student, what made the difference for you?
I was actually very lucky with my teachers. When I went to the Special School of Music in Dresden, I was 12. I had a very calm teacher, but he knew everything about playing naturally. That was actually, and I started the first months just open strings. Can you imagine me playing open string? But it was very, very necessary to get, and I'm really thankful to him after many years also of teaching and of growing up. He gave me the basic to be able to play in a natural way. And he did it in a very calm way. And then I went to Berlin to study. And this was teacher, always optimistic. Always, yes, you can do that. So he gave me such a, in a way, confidence that I'm able to do it, because I was always a doubter. Okay. I doubted all the time. And he was very pragmatic in a way, and helped me a lot with that. So I was lucky with the type of teachers I had. Most you learn after that. Musically, you have to learn for all your life. Yeah. So that means I'm very thankful to everything I got from them. But it is, after that, it's your responsibility to go on.
To keep learning.
To keep learning, exactly.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
Well, thank you. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us here on Soundscapes. I hope we'll see you soon. Please visit us again and again and again.